Our guest today is Conneaut Municipal Court Judge Carl Difranco. He is running for re-election. And so you were appointed by Governor John Kasich 5 years ago, was it?
Correct.
And then you ran for election, you had opposition, and you won.
That is correct, yeah.
So that takes care of that. Can you give us a little bit of background first about you, as you know, you got your law degree and that sort of thing?
Sure. I went to Purdue University, graduated Phi Beta Kappa, magna cum laude, went to law school, Penn State Dickinson School of Law, and began practicing law, general practice firms. In 2015, I knew there were two openings in Ashtabula. My family owned property in North Kingsville, so I was very familiar with the area, especially this area. And I threw my hat into the ring because I liked the area. And I was fortunate that through the process, the governor's office appointed me. And then, as you indicated, I ran for election the first time, and was fortunate that the voters elected me, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So you replaced Tom Harris, who became
Correct.
a common pleas judge.
Yes, Tom, I believe, ran. He was reelected, and then he ran for common pleas judge, and he won. So he served the first year of the municipal court term while I was running, and the last 5 years I got to serve. So 5 to 6 years.
Okay. So did you always want to be a lawyer or a judge?
Strangely enough, the answer to that question is yes. I knew early on that I enjoyed it in law school, and as soon as the opportunity arose at my old job, working in Canon, Aveni, Molcheski, Judge Cicconetti, as soon as I was able to, I had my 6 years of practice in. I asked him if he would consider appointing me to the bench as an acting judge, and he did. And I did that for 10 years until this opened up, and I learned a heck of a lot from him. He's the creative sentencing judge, and he just retired.
Oh yeah. He just retired last week.
Right. So I have learned a good deal from him about the type of temperament that a judge should have, and I've tried to emulate that and put my own spin on it. Not wanting to copy his creative sentences, but recognizing that it's municipal court, and at municipal court level, almost everyone is redeemable.
Right, you're talking about misdemeanor cases here, correct? You're not trying any murder cases, or
you don't try.
But
you don't try them at this level. Sometimes there are preliminary hearings,
right.
Like we had. I think within the first month I was on the bench, we had a preliminary hearing for a murder case, and that case was bound over. Sometimes you get felonious assaults and so on, but a lot of times they're directly indicted, especially when they're cases that involve children or rape, that type of thing, where you don't want to put, or presumably the prosecutor doesn't want to put the victim, give the defense attorney an opportunity to cross-examine the victim here, and then get another bite at the apple over there because it's under oath here. So it just depends. If we get the preliminary hearing, we deal with it.
So how many cases do you handle, like in a week or a month, or what are they mostly?
Well, that varies. It depends on how many arrests are made, and even if arrests are made, the charging authority has to determine that there's sufficient evidence to charge them, and that's up to the Conneaut Police Department and the law director's office. There's oftentimes people will call and want to know where charges are on such and such and such and such a case, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So, the clerks will be like, we haven't received charges, and a lot of times we don't. So that is not our role, and I try to explain that to people at arraignment, that we're not the charging authority. My job as the judge is to make sure you understand your rights, the nature of the charges, possible consequences, and that the hearings are fair, and that both sides get an adequate opportunity and due process is had.
You make sure they have an attorney too if they want one?
Absolutely. As long as they qualify. There are indigency standards that we go by, the federal poverty guidelines. But I err on the side of caution and appoint, especially in felony cases where I know they're looking at very serious time, that if the case is bound over, they're going to need an attorney. So, the way I look at it is appointed at this level, to make sure rights are protected. So
you don't want the charges thrown out because they were not adequately defended.
Sure, and there's ways that they can deal with that in common pleas level too, because a lot of times there's only one charge here,
Mm-hmm.
where there may be several that are indicted once they get over.
Right.
It just depends. But you want to make sure people, the rights are protected. I mean, that's an important thing in our country. So, and it depends on any given week how many cases. I mean, there could be, 15, 20 criminal cases on a Monday, and then on a Tuesday, 20 traffic cases and 10 criminal arraignments, and then afternoon pre-trials for 6, 8, 10 cases. It just depends. Wednesdays are our civil days, and there's been more small claims cases lately, which are that's
Right.
because they increased the jurisdictional money limit. You can sue up to $6,000.
Oh, I did not know that.
So
Good to know.
Yeah, more work.
Yeah.
But it gives people an opportunity to come in and represent themselves. They don't have to hire an attorney up to that amount. So, and we get a lot of those, and they're essentially like mini divorces.
Right.
But again, it's an important, obviously, for the people that are the litigants. You want to make sure that they get their day in court, and while maintaining the decorum of the courtroom, and reminding them that they're in court and they don't need to be directing their comments to each other, but to the bench.
Can you tell me like some of the things that you've done? I saw a statement by you. You do have opposition in this election,
Sure.
And he said something, alluded to something like so much more could be done. I'm not sure what he was talking about. I guess I'll ask him when I interview him. But what have you done? What innovations have you done? I know you've done stuff like with the website disseminating information.
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, when I ran in 2015, when I first came here, I didn't want to change the court until after the first election. I didn't think it was appropriate to change too many things, like the forms that were used and the way things were done, because there was only one of me, and there was everyone else that had worked here for 10, 15, 20 years under Judge Harris. So I wanted to get through the first election. But some of the things I noticed right out of the gate were how many DUS charges, driving under suspension charges, we had, and it was a staggering amount of cases. I was getting 6, 8 cases every day of people driving under suspended license, and I understand the burdensome reinstatement fees, but in talking with the clerks, there was really no program to help them maneuver through the process with the BMV. So we created a what we call a SLIP program, a suspended license intervention program, and we've helped them, get their license back. And it's been over 100 people to date, that are now driving with valid licenses and with insurance in this area. So I view that as an accomplishment. In 2016, after I won, one of the first things I did is this thing right here. I called the Supreme Court, and knowing that we were lacking in security, I had them do a physical security assessment. And then we've implemented many of the recommendations from the Supreme
That's the
Court.
City Hall building here you're talking
Yes,
about? Okay.
it's the court in and of itself, but also the physical structure
Right.
of City Hall, because there's certain things I really can't get into on the air that are in the
But you don't want
assessment.
people walking in with guns into the
Right,
courthouse.
Right, but there's other things around the courthouse, and one of the main recommendations was to form a security committee, and so we did that with the city manager, the police chief, fire chief, bailiffs, and came up with strategies, to better secure the building, whether that's through, better, putting on more cameras, or the metal detectors, having armed bailiffs, uniformed armed bailiffs, which is obviously a physical deterrent for anyone that's thinking about doing something. And, every day we look at the list of people, and I know the chief's looking at them, and we see who's coming in. And obviously there's things we couldn't implement from a cost perspective, and sometimes just physically not possible, some of the recommendations, because of the age of the building and the cost that would be involved. But I'm comfortable. There's always things that can be done, but we've done a good deal of the recommendations from the Supreme Court, and I believe most people that come in here can see that right out of the gate. Whether it's the cameras, the physical presence of the bailiffs, and that they're armed, or just the fact that everyone's wanded. I remember when I first came in here, I walked right in the building with no metal detector. So, let's say 2017. I'm trying to think. We did I think that's when the Supreme Court appointed me to the Ohio Sentencing Commission, and that's something that we've been working on down in Columbus. And it is it's a commission that the Chief Justice appoints the people on, and I think I'm one of about 4, maybe 5 judges across the state that are appointed to it. And the primary objective is to modernize the Ohio Revised Code and enhance justice and ensure fair sentencing. And that's actually taken on a very important role, with the election last time and the issues that they were trying to put forward with reducing felony 4s and 5s to misdemeanors. It failed ultimately, but that was a big incentive, I think, for our state legislature to address it before we had outside influence addressing it again. And we've been dealing with that down in Columbus. 2018, we started looking at the amount of cases we were getting, and I decided that I wanted a better way to monitor the defendants, so we kind of created like an informal drug court, what I like to call intensive supervision probation.
Is this something like what Gary Yost does in Common Pleas?
No, it's considerably different, because Judge Yost has a specialized docket,
right?
And that is something that the Supreme Court oversees.
They have that in Ashtabula too, to an extent, right?
Right, and we looked at doing that here, but there are, I think, certainly some drawbacks that impede our ability to do that. Not just the size of the court, the staffing of the court, but the defense bar is much smaller here. There's a part-time prosecutor that works 1.5 days. I think the public defender comes 3 days. So we have certain limitations that Ashtabula and certainly Common Pleas aren't faced with. So I decided to take it upon myself to do it informally, and that's what we do. We hired a probation officer that comes out of the court's budget, predominantly, and not city council.
So do you meet with people and say, how you doing?
Absolutely. What we do is once someone's convicted and they're sentenced, and we talk about, usually we have what's called a comprehensive diagnostic assessment, and that's done through either Signature Health or community counseling, predominantly, sometimes LARC. And fortunately, in talking with our community partners, a couple years ago, we were able to assure them that there would be a need out here, and that's why you see community counselings here and Signature Health here. It's because we give them a lot of business, so to speak. There is definitely a need.
Just down the street here.
Right. Well, right, because transportation was an impediment. I would constantly find people that I couldn't get to Ashtabula. I don't have a way to Ashtabula, and that's difficult to want to punish people when there's a legitimate reason if it's transportation. So fortunately, those agencies were able to set up offices out here, so there really is no excuse why you can't get there now. So we get the assessment, and then Pam monitors them, meets with them. Sometimes it's weekly. Usually it is if it's intensive probation, because we know those people are more of a risk, whether it's because of domestic violence, or because they're dual diagnosis, they're self-medicating and they're violent, or in dysfunctional relationships, or just they can't beat the demons of their drug addiction.
Yeah.
And
drug addiction is a big thing, isn't it?
It is, and what happens is we'll call them in, we'll monitor, we'll test them. We can test them. We call them in. They got till the end of the day to come in, and they come in and they know there's a consequence, and it's not always jail. It depends on the circumstances, but often it is. I'm not.
We got 1 minute left, and I wanted, as Carl Difranco is our guest, Conneaut Municipal Court Judge, I did want to address the jail, because the county's looking at a new jail.
Sure.
So, and they've got people backed up to Kansas City waiting to get in there. So, does that problem in Conneaut?
I do work with the jail. We have a 12-day jail predominantly. And we try to keep it to that. Sometimes it's just not possible based on the, if we've got people from Pennsylvania or people from Texas that, we picked up here with warrants that we're waiting for the troopers to come up and get them, so they may stay here a while. And then we've got our people that we deal with. But the jail in Conneaut's very, very good to work with. And the jail in Ashtabula has been very good to work with as well. Lieutenant Kimberly is the jail administrator, and he's been phenomenal.
He's going to be a guest on the show soon.
Well, you tell him I said hi. He's done a phenomenal job, and he has made it very, very good for me to be able to implement longer sentences when I need to, when I feel that someone's going to need 60 days. And we do that a lot with the jail to give people treatment. We put them in longer sentences and let them out as soon as the bed opens up, so that they're not shooting up fentanyl and they're not a risk to themselves or others.
Okay, very good. We have to stop there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Judge Carl Difranco.